Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Velastegui, one of your hosts and managing partner of the Legacy Group. We're excited to welcome you this afternoon to a new webinar series that will focus on high earners and highly compensated executives who are building wealth rapidly and are losing too much to taxes. Taxes is probably, as many of you might know, is one of my favorite topics to talk about because I think that a great deal of what you work for throughout your life is lost through either whether it's income taxes, capital gains taxes, or ultimately estate taxes, which we talked about to a lot of extent at the end of the last webinar series. So this one in particular, so this four-part interactive series is going to guide high earners from income resilience to asset empowerment. Four sessions. The first one, which we'll go through today, is going to lay the foundation for achieving financial independence. We'll go through savings, the structure and mindset of individuals that are face themselves in a high-paying career or position, and you're juggling the difference between short-term income, long-term incomes, and savings, and how does taxes impact you with that. Session 2 will focus on optimizing equity compensation such as RSUs. I know some of you guys here that have joined us have very specific questions about that, so we hope to see you and join us in the second session, which will be specifically talking about that. Session 3, we're going to be reducing tax drag and focusing on very specific strategies that are help you maximize your end result. And then lastly, we're going to really show you how you translate this plan into an estate as well as a legacy that's going to help really maximize all you've worked for. At the end of the day, it's about what is the most tax efficient way to grow your wealth so that you can easily really start thinking about that word legacy, because legacy is a lot of times is something that there's a big misconception around that. So, and we'll deal with that as we go into this program a little further. Pam, can you take us to the next couple of slides, please? In today's session, one more. In today's session, we're going to first focus. Oh, well, before we get that, let me tell you a little bit about the Legacy Group, and our mission is very simple. Is to help you live a life of greater confidence, choice, and financial freedom. And we do so through a proprietary service-first philosophy that helps implement a three-dimensional approach through planning. We don't only just focus on your financial planning, but also your legal and tax planning as well. Is only through that focus or through that approach that we're truly able to identify coordination gaps, planning opportunities, and in no difference for people that are building wealth as well as there are people that are in their distribution phase. It really doesn't matter. We always take the same approach because taxes is one of your biggest enemies, and we're here to help with that. So, Pam, next slide. Your speakers today, I have the pleasure to introduce my two partners, Robert Sturgis and Matt Wilco, who will take you through the foundational planning we talked about. Rob is an 18-year veteran in retirement planning and an IRMA certified wealth planner. Matt has been with us for 5 years. He's an expert in business and retirement planning and income projections. Pam, next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about what's on the agenda today is really, four things. The first is the Great American Myth and the financial awareness gap. Most common misconceptions that derail retirement planning and why many conventional plans fail. It used to be that if you just save 10% of your income, eventually you get to retire and you'll be happy. But again, that, because of times changing and so many things that are impacting in your later lives, I think it's good to know why some of these, big financial pitfalls are a big drag on people's retirements. Then we're going to move on to building a personal financial blueprint, which is very simple. Just like you do need a business plan when you start a business, or you need architectural drawings when you're building a house, financial planning or a sound financial plan is one that aligns savings, taxes, and legacy so that you can achieve your goals, dreams, and aspirations. We're going to Couple that with additional strategic savings and strategies that are going to make your decision making, your decisions are going to be aligned with the things you need to consider in your later years, specifically around your income tax planning and how that dramatically improves when you are in retirement. With that, we're going to hopefully leave some time at the very end for some Q&A. I'm sure that if there are any questions, we are going to be monitoring the chat. So feel free to include any questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer as we go along. With that, I want to hand it over to Rob so he can take us through the presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. One of the first things that we tell our clients is that the key to a successful retirement is having an income stream that is stable, predictable, and consistent. Something that you know will be there on the first of the month, every single month, to cover expenses. But one of the things they don't tell us is that the more you make in pre-retirement income, the smaller portion of that stable, predictable income that most of us rely on, which is Social Security, the smallest percentage of that pre-retirement income it's actually going to make up. For anyone that is used to a pre-retirement income of $300,000, Social Security is only going to make up 20% of that pre-retirement income. So what that means is that more of the onus is on you to make sure that you're planning and strategizing to make up that deficit so you can continue to maintain the standard of living you've grown accustomed to and do all the things you've dreamt about when you're entering retirement. So when I say that the onus is on you, conventional wisdom was always, if you work and if you save in a 401k with compounding growth and continuous contributions, there'll come a point in time where you'll hit that magic number and you'll be able to retire. But what if I told you that that was a flawed system? And what if I told you that that way of thinking may be putting people in more harm than good? What you're going to see on the screen here is 3 numbers. We like to break this down as the most simplistic definition of retirement you're ever going to see. What do these numbers represent? 5 is the amount of money or the dollars that I put away. 15 is the growth within that account. And 20 is what my end number is. If I were to ask you, at which number would you prefer to pay taxes? What would most people say? Pam, if you could click next. Most people would agree that they would like to pay taxes at the $5 number. Again, it makes sense. If I'm going to pay taxes, I want to pay it on the lowest number possible. But when most of you look at what you're currently doing for your retirement strategy and what you're saving in, I bet when Pam hits the button next to line again, most are doing this: 401ks, traditional IRAs, relying on pension income, relying on Social Security benefits. So again, we kind of agreed that most people would prefer to pay tax at the lowest possible number. But as conventional wisdom has told us, saving a 401k, saving an IRA, it's actually being counterproductive to what we just agreed upon. The next thing we're seeing a lot of people do is save in brokerage accounts, non-qualified stock portfolios, invest in real estate, create some strategy where if they're earning a lot pre-retirement income and they're getting maxed out at the 401k limits, they need to do more on their own. Again, they're being taxed now instead of at that $5 number, at that $15 number. So one of the reasons why most plans fail is because while you may have asset diversification, a lot of people don't focus on tax diversification. Being able to take advantage of Roth accounts. A lot of corporate 401ks are offering Roth provisions now. In the past, there were certain income phase outs that precluded us from being able to contribute to Roth. That is not the case if your 401k offers it. HSAs. If you happen to have a high deductible health plan that is HSA compatible, it can be another valuable bucket that you can put money away on a pre-tax basis. Money will grow tax deferred. It potentially tax-free as long as you use it for a qualifying medical expense in retirement. So one of the things we just discussed is that most people's conventional wisdom put them in buckets of money that were being taxed at a very inefficient manner. What are some signs that your plan may be failing? Well, as I just mentioned, if all you're caring about is reaching that end number is not the end all be all. If your end number is $10 million, what does that $10 million equate to in income? Coming from a IRA or a 401k, a $100,000 distribution might only net you $70,000 or $80,000. that same account value inside of a Roth, you're getting dollar for dollar. So without proper tax planning, that magic number may not be what you think it is. The other problem we see a lot of people doing is just hoping that they are going to get a strategic linear growth. As long as I get 6 to 8% every single year, I can hit my magic number in 20 years. Well, the market doesn't work that way. We have good years, we have bad years. And while an average is great in your accumulation phases, once you introduce a distribution, the importance of how those rates are earned is significant. Having larger losses in the earlier years can have a tremendous effect negatively on the long-term viability of your strategy. As I mentioned earlier, you're focused more on assets and not income, not focusing on asset location, which is where your asset is owned, and only focusing on asset allocation in how you're invested could be a key detriment to the long-term success of that plan. And one of the biggest things we see now is that most people are not focusing on longevity. Today's day and age, right now, globally, there's about 600,000 people who are 100 years old or older. We are living longer. We are living longer, and unfortunately, some of us are experiencing more health issues. While attributing to limited morbidity, it's not contributing to mortality. So not having a plan that is set up to provide for certain unexpected healthcare expenses, or potentially living until your late 90s to your 100s and outliving your money, are plans that people have to adjust for. Pam, can you go to the next one? Again, this is going to sort of solidify what I just said, that the market is not linear. There are ups, there are downs, there are big years, there are slow years. Not being able to consider what potentially could happen and making sure your plan is insulated to protect against that type of volatility is key towards reaching your end goal. One of the biggest things we see with some of our contemporaries is that your plan is not process driven. It is not driven with a outline, which Matt is going to lay out for you later on, as to how is it that I get to my end goal and achieve the financial independence that I'm looking for. A lot of times people focus strictly on product. This product will give me this income. And agreeing to that product in the earlier years of your working years for something you're going to need 20 or 30 years from now could be catastrophic, because you don't know what the future holds for us. Jeff mentioned it earlier. We always say that, in life, there's only two guarantees: death and taxes. And not being, smart with how you plan for taxes, not looking at what the tax liability could be, not only today, but in the future, not only when you're in distribution phase, but what about legacy planning? Wouldn't you like to make sure that in your planning, you account for the most tax efficient way to pass that legacy to your heirs and loved ones? And the thing I said earlier about being product driven and not knowing what the future holds for us. Most of us, our relationship with money changes every couple of years. If most of you think back to your relationship with money 5 years ago, what it looks like now, and what it could look like 5 years from now, I guarantee that picture is going to be very different. Different jobs, different income streams, different family dynamics, different health dynamics. Not looking to make sure that your plan is set up to weather the storm of external factors that can act upon it, not just related to market volatility, is something that could have, again, a terrible effect on the long-term viability and success of your plan. Going to hand it over to Matt, and Matt's going to take it from here for the next couple of slides.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Wilco, and I'm a registered financial planner and one of the partners here at the Legacy Group. And as Rob said, we're going to transition into this next segment, and we're going to talk about what we like to call a different form of a pandemic. So the next slide, Pam. We find that most people fall into one of these categories. They are driven by what they want, not necessarily what they need. They feel that everybody is out to get them or sell them something, so it's very difficult for them to find advice from good advisors. And they lack the interest or awareness of the importance to plan for their future. And all of this, unfortunately, leads into some of these troubling statistics that we'll go over. 1 in 5 people in America spend more time planning their vacations than they do managing their finances. Close to 70% of people will have less than $10,000 of retirement savings based on a 2,000 person survey. Right? That's 3/4 of America that will have less than $10,000 of retirement savings. 58,000. That is the median 401k balance for people over the age of 65 here in America. And last but not least, less than 8% of the US population has planned for the cost of Medicare, which is why these statistics lead us to calling this a financial pandemic. I'm going to turn it over to Rob to handle this next slide.
Matt's going to get us into some of the strategies we use that our clients find extremely successful in creating the proper path to a successful retirement and achieving financial independence. But I'm going to go over a couple of misconceptions that people think and certain ideas that essentially are setting you up for failure. As I mentioned earlier, the conditional wisdom was save in your 401k, get the tax deduction today when I'm at a higher tax bracket, and I'll take income out later on when I'm in a lower tax bracket. The fact of the matter is, when most of us are in retirement, most of us are not looking to stop working and give up on all the things we love to do. In fact, it's the exact opposite. We're looking to do more. We're looking to travel more. Maybe we're looking to go to more shows, sporting events, play golf, take the family on vacations. Because of that, most people in retirement are living on 70 to 100% of their pre-retirement income, adjusted for inflation through life expectancy. So when you think about that, in order for you to maintain the standard of living that you've dreamt about and live the retirement lifestyle that you've envisioned, you're probably not going to be in a lower tax bracket. So does it make sense, as we mentioned earlier, to get a tax break on the $5 contribution, but pay on the $20 distribution? Or does it make sense to maybe pay the taxes earlier and know that every distribution coming out is tax-free? The other thing that people sometimes figure is that, hey, my company has a 401k. I'm going to contribute to that to the maximum level. I'm going to get a corporate match. It's going to grow, and that's going to be enough. But what if it's not? What if it's not enough based upon this large amount of income that you guys are earning and living on today? The cap on what you can put away for a 401k is truly not there for the very high earners. And as I mentioned earlier, for anyone making larger than $300,000 in pre-retirement income, Social Security is only going to replace 20% of that. So if you're not saving enough, the lifestyle that you've dreamt of may not be realistic if the 401k is the only vehicle you're using. I touched on this earlier about just hitting my number. That number is a moving target. Goals change, lifestyles change, family dynamics change. So again, not knowing what a number is and what the potential net number based on taxes may be setting yourself up for failure. My personal goal is to financially be able to retire at 55, but I want to work until the day I die. I love what I do. I love bringing value to people, but what if I can't work forever? What if health dictates that, unfortunately, I am unable to work? I don't have the mental capacity to continue at the pace or with the consistency that I'm doing now and cannot provide the value I'm providing. Well, if your plan is to work forever and external forces say that's not possible, are you set up to be set up into a forced retirement? And we say all this to finally get to massing certain numbers, accumulating certain goals. And at the end of the day, people say, well, why focus on estate planning? It's only for the wealthy. The fact of the matter is everyone needs a plan. Again, we've focused on this. There are things that are outside of our control that can act upon our plan. One of the greatest philosophers of our time is Mike Tyson, who said everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, what if there's some type of incapacity, or what if there is some type of change that affects how you have to leave your money? What if you have a sibling? What if you have a child? What if you have someone that's on special needs or on Medicaid, and leaving them an asset might disqualify them from their benefits? So being intentional with your planning and making sure that you have the documents in place to mirror your wants is very important. What you're going to see here, again, is another external factor that one must consider when planning for retirement. Again, most people consider that linear growth. I need $150,000 in retirement income, $300,000 in retirement income. Based on inflation average of 3%, year two, I need 309. Year two, I need 320. But the fact of the matter is that inflation is a moving target. You know, during the pandemic, when things were going out of control, back in 2022, inflation hit 40-year highs. People trying to buy eggs, you know, it cost a lot more. It was almost impossible to get. And if you're on a fixed income and your plan isn't set up to outpace inflation, while you may have hit your magic number, that magic number may be irrelevant if the purchasing power of your dollar is not getting the same value based on your investments. Pam, if you go to the next slide. Further kind of, you know, bringing this home, look at these numbers. These are inflationary numbers for most of the things that we experience. Everything is up significantly. We mentioned earlier, I want to work forever. Well, what if there are certain health issues that pose an issue or pose a roadblock to that? Look at the growth in what hospital services have cost, medical expenses have cost, college tuition. The only things that have actually gotten cheaper over the past 25 years is technologically based. Cell phone services, internet, and telephone. So again, we have to factor in that the money we have may have to last us 25 to 30 years, and it may have to grow because we're going to be spending more based upon the increased cost of all the services and needs we'll have in retirement. Mal, can you pick up from here?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. You know, so all of that is a good preface to launch into this next segment, which is talking about building a personalized financial blueprint, right? So, you know, we've established a lot of the issues, right, of inflation and other concerns. Are we saving money into the right places? You know, that leads a lot of people to say, okay, well, where do I start? You know, what can I do about this? And that's what we'll talk about in the next few slides. So we'll start with the success graph. We know that as long as an individual has 20 to 25 years of time, they need to be saving 15 to 20% of their annual income in order to maintain their standard of living through life expectancy. Pam, if you could just hit the next slide. Now, if you look at that success graph, you'll see that the annual income line is rising over time. This just means that as we age and advance in our careers, typically we make more money. And typically we make more money just due to inflation. But what I want you to pay attention to is if you see the annual savings line is running parallel with the annual income line. This means that as we earn and command a higher income, we need to be saving more. And as we save and invest it, it is vital that we pick blue chip quality products to help us accumulate wealth. There's got to be a good balance of different investments so that they are aligned with our risk tolerance. Now, you maybe ask yourself the question, why go through all this trouble? Well, the reason why is because eventually we're going to wake up one day to go to work and we're going to realize that we're going there because we absolutely love what we do, not because we have to. We call this moment achieving financial independence. Financial independence, more specifically, is the moment in time where we have enough income-producing assets to replace 70 to 100% of our income today, inflation protected for the rest of our lives. Now, as you can see on the bottom of the graph, most folks want to achieve financial independence by age 65 to 67. Where do we start today in order to achieve that? Now, if you can go to the next slide, please, Pam. So what I'll say first, before we get into the graphics, is that achieving significant financial success has nothing to do with how much money we make. But it does have everything to do with our savings habits. As previously mentioned, it's going to require a significant effort over a long period of time to achieve our long-term goals. So allow us to illustrate what we mean. The circle that you see here, this represents what any of us make in a given year. And the circle on the left is showing folks that are saving 0 to 5% of their income. Unfortunately, these folks are on a path to economic failure. It is going to be impossible for them to ever achieve financial independence if they're not saving any money, or if they're saving such a small amount relative to what they make. In the center, you'll see folks that are saving 6 to 14% of their income. We like to say they're on a path to moderate financial success. And on the right, we have folks that are saving 15 to 20% of their income. They're on a path to significant financial success. Now, some of the folks in this webinar today may notice that based on their current savings rate, they fall into one of the first two circles. We here at the Legacy Group, myself, Jeff, and Rob, we work very hard with our clients, enabling them to achieve significant financial success by developing a savings plan that allows them to invest, reinvest the appropriate amounts to achieve their long-term objectives, and then spending what they have left over. Achieving significant financial success is not something that any of us are going to achieve overnight. Rather, it's something that we accomplish together with our clients as we build a financial blueprint. And that takes us to the next slide. So it probably is safe to say that if we were going to build a house before construction starts, it's a good idea to have a blueprint, as Jeff mentioned earlier. Or if any of us were going to start a business, it would be highly advisable that we develop a business plan before we open the business on day one. Well, at the Legacy Group here, we believe that it is vital that everybody have a financial blueprint, which we're going to represent in the house graphic that you see on your right. And like any good house, there's different rooms in the house, and each room represents different financial goals that we have. Our job as planners for our clients is to help our clients determine how much they need financially in each room, understand when they need it, discuss and develop and implement the best strategies to ensure each one of these rooms is properly funded. Now, we talked before about financial independence and that requiring a significant effort over a long period of time. You can see that that's one of the rooms of the house. Inevitably, there are going to be other significant events that impact our life. So, for example, some of us on this webinar today may have kids, and it may be important for us to pay for college for those kids. Some of us may want to purchase a second home one day or upgrade our primary home. And inevitably, there's going to be other special events that happen in life, such as weddings and other religious events that we're going to want to save and invest for. If any of these events are in our future, then it is important that we go through this process. We help our clients build a savings plan that will be prepared for these different life events. Now, when looking at this house, the most significant, but unfortunately least appreciated part of any home is the foundation. In this example, the foundation is what's going to support all of the hopes, dreams, and aspirations that you see listed at the top. And when looking at your financial blueprint, your foundation is your income or your ability to produce an income. Unfortunately, there are two life events that can happen that will prevent us from achieving what is most important to us. This could be an untimely death or disability of ourselves or of our spouse. Either of these events will devastate our plans if the proper planning is not in place prior. This is why when we work with clients, part of the focus and part of the commitment that we help clients make is allocated towards reinforcing their foundation. Reason being is that we believe the event that causes the tragedy should be the event that provides the solution for those that depend on us most. Now, this takes us into our next slide, talking about the power of savings, and I'm going to hand it back over to Rob for this segment.
Thank you, Matt. I think Matt did a great job of showing everyone what it looks like in terms of achieving economic failure, moderate financial success, and significant financial success. But what does that look like in numbers? What you're going to see here is 3 people, 40 years of age, making $500,000 a year. We're going to put each of them in a different bucket in terms of percentage of income being saved. Joe is going to save 5%, $25,000 annually. Frank is going to be a little bit more ambitious, and he's going to save 14%, or $70,000 a year. And Sally is going to be the most aggressive of them all and save 25% of her income, which is going to equate to $125,000 a year. Now, the reason we do this is for a couple of reasons. First, to show you the significant impact saving more has. But additionally, when you start saving, waiting to start saving can have almost as tremendous an effect on our end number as the amount with which we save. So if we were to assume that they each were to save for 25 years, from age 40 to age 65, with a 6% rate of return, if they start saving at age 40, look at the difference that number equates to. Joe is going to end up with 1.3, almost $1.4 million. Again, a very nice sum. But if someone is used to living on $500,000 a year, $1.3 million is not going to provide the necessary income for us to maintain that standard of living. While Frank was more ambitious and was saving 14% as opposed to the 5%, he's going to amass almost $4 million in assets. Again, much better situation, much larger account value, but still may not have enough to generate the type of income he needs to maintain that standard of living. What this may mean is that instead of retiring at 65, Frank may still have to work, or Frank may have to potentially lower his expenditures in retirement and not live out the lifestyle he was hoping to live for. What you'll see here with Sally is that 25% saving has put her at almost $7 million. That is going to generate enough income to maintain her standard of living, her style of living, her expectation of living throughout life expectancy as long as managed properly. But more importantly, look at the slide or the bar graph just to the right. By waiting 10 years to start saving and now only having 15 years to compound those savings and not 25 years, look at the difference. For Joe, if $1.4 million wasn't going to do it, 500 or 600,000 sure isn't going to do it either. You're going to look at almost a year's worth of income. How is he going to be able to retire and live the lifestyle he's accustomed to? Same for Frank. Again, $1.6 million, a very nice size account. But when you're used to living on $500,000, that's only 3 years worth of that type of lifestyle. And finally, Sally, who was the most ambitious of all of them, saving 25%. Again, Matt mentioned that you need to have 20 to 25 years saving at 15 to 20%. Even though she was saving 25% because it was only for 15 years, the likelihood of success is not as great as if she had started her strategy 10 years sooner. We say this all to, again, saving is important. Not just how you save, but what you save, when you save, and what vehicles you use and tax strategies you use to save. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Jeff to kind of bring us home for today's presentation.
Guys, thank you so much for that information. And we'd like to focus on this slide again, this house slide, because after almost 25 years of doing this, I have to tell you, some of my favorite stories to share, are with people that I've worked with, for upwards of 20 years. And some of my most favorite clients aren't the guys that are making $1 million or so, but rather the ones that made average incomes, right? And I think that the message or one of the lessons that I've learned, it has not, achieving financial independence has nothing to do really with how much money you're making, but what you do with it. So the whole concept of showing you a blueprint and a house with rooms in it is really about thinking ahead in the future, right? Because the mindset when you're beginning to plan is one that you have to start making sacrifices today, right? And I think that's a big important thing for people to understand, right? Because planning for tomorrow, you have to sacrifice things you want to do today, right? But there's a balance to all that. And it's really funny because often we'll hear people say things like, if I knew then what I know now, right? Because they find themselves in a situation where they've done a good job saving, they have, quote unquote, enough income, but now they're facing things like taxes, right? They're losing so much to taxes because of either, high income, Social Security, IRMA. There's so many things that can really impact your transition from earning a living to distribution, right? And, I think that it's important for everyone to understand that, as you're as you continue to progress in your working years and your accumulation phase, right? It's important to force yourself to start thinking, what does your blueprint look like, right? What are your future goals, dreams, aspirations? It doesn't, it often happens when we meet with people for the first time and we ask them the question, what do you want things to be like in 15 or 20 years? And people just don't know how to answer that. Maybe because they haven't had a chance to, or the intentional approach of thinking of these things. But what this process that we take you through is having that intentional conversation so that you can start thinking about some of those life events, right? Um, we always ask people during our presentations, to think about their relationship with money. Their relationship with money changes every 5 years or so. If I think of my life, I'm 44 today, but I can tell you that every 5 years prior to today, how I looked at money and my relationship with money was much different. And it's very similar to probably how many of you are there today, right? Working. When you start working, you're not married, you have no kids, no responsibility. So if you're making a lot of money, you have a lot of extra disposable income to do things, a lot of the things that you want. But as you begin to mature, as your life progresses and you start doing some of the life events that everybody does, getting married, buying a house, having a kid, these responsibilities change, right? But what often doesn't change is how people treat money, right? So that's when these conversations are important to have, right? Because unless you do have an intentional conversation and approach to these things, you're going to get to a place in your 50s and maybe later than that when you realize, oh my goodness, I have to start planning. So I hope at a minimum, what you've learned today is that you do need time, you do need a plan, and you have to be very intentional to think about what you want the future to be. With that, we'll leave you guys. We'll open up the couple of minutes, the room for questions. Like I said before, this is a four-part series of the presentations. The next presentation, it's going to be in a couple of weeks. We'll release those dates, and we're going to specifically be talking about ways to optimize equity compensation. So